There's a man who walks into a Walmart in Omaha wearing a cheap suit and driving a car older than most college students. His name is Warren Buffett. He's worth over $100 billion, and nobody in that store has any idea. This isn't a story about humility. This is about psychology. The psychology of people who have everything but choose to look like they have nothing. And the deeper you go into this behavior, the more you realize the people who never show their wealth understand something the rest of us don't. They understand that real power is invisible. Let's start with what most people get wrong about millionaires. We think wealth looks like private jets, Lamborghinis, designer clothes, and Instagram posts from Dubai. We think money screams. But here's the truth. The loudest people in the room are usually the brokest, and the quietest, they own the room. There's a concept in psychology called signaling theory. It was developed by Michael Spence, an economist who won the Nobel Prize. Signaling theory says that people use visible markers to communicate value. A peacock shows its feathers. A luxury car shows success. But here's the twist. The people who truly have value don't need to signal it. They already know what they're worth. And more importantly, they don't need you to know. Warren Buffett lives in the same house he bought in 1958 for $31,000. He eats breakfast at McDonald's. He drives a modest car. And when asked why he doesn't live like other billionaires, he said, "I'm happy there. I'd move if I thought I'd be happier someplace else." That's it. No performance, no justification, just clarity. Compare that to the millionaire next door. The term was actually coined by Thomas Stanley and William Danko in their book, The Millionaire Next Door. They spent decades studying wealthy Americans and found something shocking. Most millionaires don't look like millionaires. They drive used cars. They live in middle-class neighborhoods. They wear normal clothes. And they do this intentionally. Why? Because they understand something most people don't. Wealth isn't about looking rich, it's about being free. Let's talk about freedom for a second. Real freedom, not the kind you see on social media. The kind where you wake up and nobody controls your time. You don't owe anyone anything. You're not performing for an audience. You're not justifying your existence with material objects. You're just free. And that's what these millionaires protect: their freedom, their peace, their anonymity. There's a psychological principle called hedonic adaptation. It's the idea that no matter what you acquire, you quickly get used to it and return to your baseline level of happiness. You buy a Rolex, it feels amazing for 2 weeks, then it's just a watch. You buy a mansion, it's exciting for a month, then it's just where you sleep. The thrill fades, but the cost remains. And the cost isn't just financial, it's psychological, it's social. It's the weight of maintaining an image, of keeping up appearances, of being watched, of being envied, of being targeted. Keanu Reeves rides the subway. He sits on benches eating sandwiches. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but you'd never know it by looking at him. And when asked about it, he doesn't give some profound answer. He just lives his life because he doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. This is what psychologist Abraham Maslow called self-actualization. It's the highest level of psychological development. It's when you stop seeking external validation and start living according to your own values. You're no longer performing, you're just being. But most people never get there because most people are trapped in what Maslow called esteem needs. They need recognition, they need status, they need other people to see them as successful, and so they spend money they don't have on things they don't need to impress people they don't like. And the millionaires who never show their wealth, they've transcended that. They've realized that the game is rigged, that the pursuit of status is endless, that there's always someone richer, always someone with a bigger house, a nicer car, a better watch, and they've decided to stop playing. Let's go deeper. There's a concept in behavioral economics called Veblen goods, named after economist Thorstein Veblen. These are goods that people buy specifically because they're expensive. The price itself is the appeal. It's not about function, it's about signaling. Look at me, I can afford this. But here's what Veblen also discovered. This behavior is driven by insecurity. People who feel secure in their wealth don't need Veblen goods. They don't need the logo, they don't need the brand, they don't need anyone to know what they paid. David Cho, the artist who painted murals at Facebook's first office and was paid in stock, became hundreds of millions of dollars when Facebook went public. He still dresses like a broke artist. He still lives simply. And when asked why, he said something profound. I already won. Why would I keep playing? That's the mentality. They've already won. The game is over, and now they're just living. There's also a safety component to this. The more visible your wealth, the more you become a target for thieves, for lawsuits, for scammers, for people who want something from you, for kidnappers in some parts of the world. The ultra-wealthy understand this instinctively. Invisibility is security. Let's talk about the paradox of luxury. The more you show your wealth, the less powerful you actually appear. Because truly powerful people don't need to show anything. Their influence speaks for itself. Their network knows who they are. Their bank account is irrelevant to their identity. There's a famous story about Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. He was one of the richest men in America, but he drove an old pickup truck and wore simple clothes. He'd walk into his own stores and nobody recognized him. And that's exactly how he wanted it, because he wasn't performing wealth, he was building it. This connects to a concept in psychology called internal versus external locus of control, developed by Julian Rotter. People with an internal locus of control believe their success comes from their own actions and decisions. People with an external locus believe success comes from outside forces, luck, or other people's opinions. And here's the key. People with an internal locus don't need external validation. They know what they've built. They know what they're capable of. They don't need a Bentley to prove it. Now let's contrast this with what happens to most people who suddenly get money. Lottery winners, athletes, celebrities. There's extensive research on this, and the pattern is clear. Most of them go broke within a few years. Why? Because they never developed the psychology of wealth. They got the money, but they didn't get the mindset. They start spending to signal, to show everyone they made it, to prove they're not who they used to be. But that very act, that desperate signaling, reveals the truth. They're still insecure. They're still seeking validation. They're still playing the game. The millionaires who never show their wealth don't have this problem, because for them, money isn't identity. It's a tool. It's security. It's freedom. But it's not who they are. Let's examine another real example. Ingvar Kamprad, the founder of IKEA. He was worth billions, but flew economy class, drove an old Volvo, and furnished his home with IKEA furniture. People thought he was cheap, but he wasn't cheap. He was intentional. He understood that every dollar spent on status is a dollar not working for you. Every moment spent maintaining an image is a moment not spent building something meaningful. There's a concept from Stoic philosophy that applies here. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who was literally one of the most powerful men in the world, wrote in his Meditations, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." He had unlimited wealth and power, and he chose simplicity, not because he had to, because he understood that complexity doesn't equal happiness. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies on happiness consistently show that beyond a certain income level, around $75,000 a year in most of the United States, additional money doesn't significantly increase happiness. What does increase happiness? Autonomy, purpose, relationships, time freedom. And you know what decreases happiness? Comparison, status anxiety, keeping up with others. The millionaires who hide their wealth have figured this out. They've escaped the comparison trap. They're not on the hedonic treadmill. They're not trying to keep up with anyone because they're not in that race anymore. Let's talk about Steve Jobs for a moment. He wore the same black turtleneck and jeans every day. He lived in a relatively modest home. He drove a Mercedes but never put license plates on it, exploiting a California loophole that gave him 6 months before plates were required, and he'd just get a new car every 6 months. Not to show off, actually the opposite, to maintain privacy, to avoid being identified, to move through the world without being constantly recognized. This is what psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi called flow. It's a state where you're so absorbed in what you're doing that external factors fade away.
You're not thinking about what you're wearing or what car you're driving or who's watching you. You're just present, just creating, just living. And you can't achieve flow when you're constantly performing, when you're maintaining an image, when you're worried about what other people think. There's also a generational component to this. Old money, truly established wealth, has a saying, "Money talks, wealth whispers." The Rockefellers don't wear logos. The Rothschilds don't post on Instagram. Real dynastic wealth understands that visibility attracts problems. Discretion preserves power. New money, on the other hand, often feels the need to announce itself, to prove it belongs, to show it made it, and that's precisely what reveals it as new money.
Let's get into the neuroscience of this. When you buy something expensive and show it off, your brain releases dopamine. It feels good. You get a hit of pleasure. But here's the problem. Dopamine is about anticipation and novelty. Once you have the thing, once people have seen it, the dopamine fades, and you need the next hit, the next purchase, the next post, the next validation. You become addicted to the signal, not the wealth itself. This is what psychologists call extrinsic motivation. You're motivated by external rewards, approval, status, recognition. And research shows that extrinsic motivation is fragile. It's never satisfied. There's always more to chase. Intrinsic motivation, on the other hand, comes from within. It's doing something because it matters to you, not because of how it looks to others. And the millionaires who never show their wealth, they've shifted to intrinsic motivation. They're building businesses because they enjoy building. They're investing because they find it intellectually stimulating. They're living simply because it actually makes them happier. Let's look at Mark Zuckerberg. Love him or hate him, the guy wears a great t-shirt and jeans almost every day. He's worth over $100 billion. He could wear anything, but he chooses simplicity. And when asked about it, he said something interesting. "I really want to clear my life to make it so that I have to make as few decisions as possible about anything except how to best serve this community." This is decision fatigue, a concept researched extensively by psychologist Roy Baumeister. Every decision you make depletes your mental energy. What to wear, what to drive, what to post, what to buy. The millionaires who live simply aren't doing it to be minimalist. They're doing it to preserve their mental energy for what actually matters. Barack Obama did the same thing as president. He wore only blue or gray suits. "I don't want to make decisions about what I'm eating or wearing because I have too many other decisions to make." These people understand that attention is the ultimate limited resource, and they're not wasting it on performance. Now let's address the elephant in the room. What about the millionaires and billionaires who do show off? The ones with the yachts and the private islands and the gold toilets. They exist, absolutely. But here's what's interesting. Many of them are either selling something or they're insecure, or both. If you're a rapper or an athlete or an influencer, showing wealth is part of your brand. It's marketing. It's not really about the lifestyle. It's about the image. It's a business decision. And that's fine. That's a different game. But if you're not selling an image, if you're just trying to live, then the ostentation becomes a burden. It attracts the wrong attention. It invites judgment. It creates distance between you and normal human experience. There's a concept in sociology called reference group theory, developed by Herbert Hyman. It says we evaluate ourselves based on comparison to others. And the more you display wealth, the more you shift your reference group to other wealthy people. Suddenly, your $100 million yacht isn't impressive because someone else has a $200 million yacht. You're back in the comparison game, and you can never win. The millionaires who stay invisible keep their reference group normal. They still relate to regular people. They still experience regular life. They're not trapped in a bubble of wealth where nothing feels meaningful because everything is easy. Let's talk about Chuck Feeney, the billionaire who co-founded Duty Free Shoppers. He gave away virtually his entire fortune, over $8 billion, to charity, and he did it secretly. For years, nobody knew. He lived in a modest apartment, flew economy, wore a cheap watch. And when asked why he gave it all away, he said, "I had one idea that never changed in my mind, that you should use your wealth to help people." This is what psychologist Carol Reif calls purpose in life, one of the 6 dimensions of psychological well-being. Feeney had money, but his purpose wasn't accumulation, it was impact, and he didn't need recognition for it.
The impact itself was a reward. Compare that to people who donate publicly, who put their names on buildings, who announce every charitable act. There's nothing wrong with that. It can inspire others, but it's a different psychology. It's still, at least partially, about the signal. The truly wealthy who hide their wealth have transcended the signal. They're playing a different game entirely, a game most people don't even know exists.
There's a darker side to wealth visibility that we need to address: vulnerability. The more people know you have, the more you become a target. This isn't paranoia. This is reality. Kidnappings, extortion, frivolous lawsuits, people coming out of nowhere claiming you owe them something, family members you haven't spoken to in years suddenly reappearing. High net worth security consultants will tell you the same thing. The first rule of wealth protection is invisibility. Don't advertise what you have. Don't make yourself a target. Live below your means publicly, even if privately you're comfortable. There's a famous case of John Paul Getty III, grandson of the oil tycoon, who was kidnapped in Italy in the 1970s. His grandfather initially refused to pay the ransom because he had 14 other grandchildren and didn't want to make them targets. The kidnappers cut off the boy's ear. Eventually, a reduced ransom was paid, but the whole family lived in fear for years afterward. The lesson? Visibility has consequences. The millionaires who stay hidden understand this viscerally. They've seen what happens when wealth becomes public knowledge. They've watched friends get sued. They've seen families torn apart by money. They've learned that privacy isn't just preference, it's protection. Let's talk about another psychological concept: self-determination theory, developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. It identifies three basic psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy is the need to feel in control of your own life. Competence is the need to feel capable and effective. Relatedness is the need for genuine connection with others. Now, here's what's interesting. Displaying wealth threatens all three. It threatens autonomy because you become defined by your possessions. It threatens competence because people attribute your success to money, not skill. And it threatens relatedness because people can't see you anymore. They only see your wealth. They only see what they can get from you. The millionaires who hide their wealth protect these three needs. They maintain autonomy by not letting possessions define them. They maintain competence by letting their work speak for itself. And they maintain relatedness by being approachable, by being seen as a person, not a bank account. There's a reason why so many lottery winners report being miserable. A study by the National Endowment for Financial Education found that 70% of people who suddenly receive a large sum of money will lose it within a few years. But it's not just that they lose the money. They lose relationships. They lose trust. They lose the ability to know who genuinely cares about them versus who just wants something. One lottery winner described it like this: "I won $20 million and lost every friend I ever had." Because once people know you have money, the relationship changes. Every interaction becomes transactional. Every request has an undertone. Every friendship is questioned. The millionaires who never show their wealth avoid this entirely. They can have real friendships, real relationships, because people don't know what they have. They're liked for who they are, not what they can provide. Let's look at Azim Premji, one of India's richest men. He's worth billions but lives modestly, flies economy, and has given away tens of billions to education and healthcare. He once said, "I strongly believe that those of us who are privileged to have wealth should contribute significantly to try and create a better world for the millions who are far less privileged." But notice he does this without fanfare, without seeking recognition, because for him, it's not about being seen as generous. It's about actually being generous. This connects to research by Adam Grant, an organizational psychologist at Wharton. In his book, Give and Take, he identifies three types of people: takers, matchers, and givers. Takers try to get as much as possible from others. Matchers believe in fairness and reciprocity, and givers contribute without expecting anything in return. His research shows that givers, when they avoid burnout, are actually the most successful in the long term. They build stronger networks. They're more trusted. They create more value. But here's the key.
The most successful givers are what he calls strategic givers. They give thoughtfully, not publicly. They help because it matters, not because it looks good. The millionaires who hide their wealth often fall into this category. They're contributing, they're helping, they're generous, but they're doing it quietly, without the performance, without the Instagram post announcing their donation. There's wisdom in this that goes back thousands of years. The Tao Te Ching, written in ancient China, says, "The sage does not hoard. The more he helps others, the more he benefits himself. The more he gives to others, the more he gets himself." This isn't about religion. It's about psychology. It's about understanding that real fulfillment doesn't come from accumulation or recognition. It comes from meaning and contribution.
So what can we learn from all of this? What's the practical takeaway for people who aren't millionaires but want to understand this psychology? First, understand that wealth and the appearance of wealth are two different things. Most people focus on the appearance. They want to look successful. They want others to think they've made it. But actual wealth is built quietly. It's built through saving, investing, building businesses, creating value. And most of that work is invisible. Second, recognize that every dollar you spend on status is a dollar that's not building wealth. That luxury car, it's not an investment. It's not making you richer. It's actually making you poorer. The millionaires who never show their wealth understand opportunity cost. They understand that money spent signaling is money not compounding. Third, realize that the pursuit of status is a trap. There's always someone richer, always someone with more. If your happiness depends on comparison, you'll never be happy. The millionaires who've escaped this trap have learned to define success internally, not externally. Fourth, understand that real power is invisible. The people who truly run things don't need to tell you. They don't need to show you. Their influence is felt, not seen. Think about the most powerful people you know personally. Chances are they don't dress like they're powerful. They don't act like they're powerful. They just are. Fifth, protect your peace. The more visible you are, the more people want from you. The more you display, the more you're disrupted. Privacy isn't about hiding. It's about protecting your ability to live on your own terms. Let's return to Warren Buffett one more time. He's been asked countless times why he lives the way he does, and his answer is always some variation of the same thing. I'm happy. Not I'm proving a point, not I'm being strategic, just I'm happy. That's the ultimate lesson. These millionaires who never show their wealth aren't following some complex strategy. They're not trying to be contrarian or make a statement. They've just figured out what actually makes them happy. And it's not the stuff. It's not the status. It's the freedom, the autonomy, the ability to live without performance, without judgment, without the weight of other people's expectations. There's a concept in positive psychology called authentic happiness, developed by Martin Seligman. It's the idea that real happiness comes from living according to your values, using your strengths, and finding meaning, not from external achievements or possessions or status. And the research backs this up consistently. The correlation between wealth and happiness is weak beyond basic needs being met, but the correlation between autonomy, purpose, and happiness is strong. The millionaires who hide their wealth have found authentic happiness. They're not performing for anyone. They're just living. And in a world obsessed with appearance, that's revolutionary. Think about your own life for a moment. How much of what you do is for you, and how much is for show? How much of what you buy is because you want it versus because you want others to see you have it? How much of your life is performance? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're important questions, because the truth is, most of us are playing a game we don't even want to win. We're chasing things that don't actually make us happy. We're seeking validation from people whose opinions don't actually matter. The millionaires who never show their wealth have stopped playing that game. They've realized it's rigged. They've realized the only way to win is to stop playing, to define success on their own terms, to live according to their own values, to be invisible not because they're hiding, but because they're free. There's a final story worth telling. Nicholas Berggruen is a billionaire investor who for over a decade didn't own a home. He lived in hotels. He owned 2 pairs of jeans and a few shirts.
Everything else he needed, he rented or borrowed. He called himself a homeless billionaire. And when asked why, he said, "Possessions weigh you down." Eventually, he bought a modest home, but the principle remains. He understood something profound. Ownership is burden. The more you have, the more you have to maintain. The more you show, the more you have to protect. The more you accumulate, the less free you become. The millionaires who never show their wealth have learned this lesson. They've learned that less is actually more, that simplicity is actually freedom, that invisibility is actually power. So the next time you see someone driving a modest car or wearing simple clothes or living in a normal house, don't assume they're struggling. They might be a millionaire. They might have more money than you can imagine, but they figured out something that most people will never will. Wealth isn't about what you show. It's about what you keep. It's about the freedom you protect. It's about living life on your own terms, not performing life for an audience. And that's a level of wealth most people will never achieve, no matter how much money they make, because it's not measured in dollars. It's measured in peace, in autonomy, in the quiet confidence of knowing you don't need to prove anything to anyone. The millionaires who never show their wealth understand the ultimate truth. The richest life isn't the one that looks the richest. It's the one that feels the most free. And freedom, real freedom, is invisible.